Cool. Hi, YouTubers. Welcome to this week's stream session. I'm Mike, CEO and co-founder of Quix. And this week I'm joined by Clara, who is a streaming advocate. Clara, is that right?
Yes, exactly. Hi, everyone.
Can you just give a little bit of background? You've only been with the team for what, a month or so, something like that. Feels like forever, but can you give everybody a bit of an introduction to yourself and
Yes,
your background?
sure. I think I joined in June, so 2 months ago now. Yeah, so where did my data career start? I think from there onward it gets relevant. We don't have to go into childhood. It started in a manufacturing company. They do sanitary fittings, and I was there in the online pricing department and had my first touch point with an on-premise Access database and totally fell in love and thought it was cutting edge. And then transitioned to a big insurance company, did some data analytics and web analytics there, and followed their big data platform migration. Then worked at a venture capital investor and advised the portfolio startups there in all topics data related, and saw very early stage companies with like just two founders, but also very mature companies, for example, a Trade Republic or a Spryker, so companies that already are unicorns or unicorns. And now I'm for 2 months with Quix as a streaming advocate.
Very cool. Quite a career so far. And which manufacturing company did you work for? Say again.
It's called Grohe.
Yeah.
They're a German manufacturing company and they do sanitary fittings. So in the bathroom, kitchen space. Yeah.
Okay. And was it like a modern data stack company? Lots of data there?
So I think in this company or in this kind of companies, very much is dominated by finance and controlling. So we didn't talk that much about data, but it was more dominated by finance and controlling. And at least for me, that times, like when I thought about what do I want to learn to become good in data, it was always Excel. And I wanted to become an Excel pro in that times. So it was really a quite different focus or quite different mindset also.
Very, very interesting. Thanks a lot, Clara. Appreciate it. And you're based in Berlin, so London to Berlin today. Looking forward to this chat. So today we're talking about the modern data stack. And that's a pretty interesting discussion. We're always talking about this, me and Clara, every day on Slack and every little chats. So what is it, Clara?
Already starting with the hardest question. Thank you. So, I mean, I think we all know there's no clear boundary on that, and it's very hard to define that. But I think when we all think back of what's modern data stack, we think back of Redshift back in 2012, becoming like the first scalable cloud data warehouse. And then like all these startups popping up around that. Like I think what's a big factor is that they're all in the cloud. It's a lot of SaaS, and we're also talking about an unbundled data stack. So not one big platform, but like different players in different parts of that, that then integrate quite well. I think that's somehow a definition and what we now call the modern data stack.
Okay. Because the modern data stack to me seems like some marketing wizardry coming out of the US, where it looks like some very smart VCs have created the modern data stack. They've coined the term in order to back their investments. I wonder if it's real. I mean, are people actually living and breathing the modern data stack today? What are you seeing in your experience?
Yeah, I think first of all, I don't have that negative opinion on this term because I think like everything has to have a name. So if you talk about something, so if people talk about modern data stack, okay, there's a question like, what exactly is it? But people somehow have an opinion on that. So, I mean, our session is also called Modern Data Stack and Streaming because it just eases the discussion. But yeah, going to your question, I think, as I already briefly mentioned at the beginning, it very much depends on the industry. So in a manufacturing company, it looks quite differently than in the startups that I work with in the VC world. And if we start with the startups, I think definitely it's happening there. The companies are breathing the modern data stack. So, and they're breathing also this unbundled experience of like having a specialized tool for this, using an open source tool for this, and are really living that.
So is that unbundling to do with the best tool for the job? Or is it to do with the person you've got in your team who's got the right experience to choose the tool they know best?
Yeah, very good question. So I personally really believe that it's a lot about that we have such a fast development in the data space, also due to the developments in the VC world and the money that's flowing around and that's being invested into companies, that we have such a fast advancement that just these tools are very specialized and just very good in their job. And this is why you use them, because you want the best tool. So maybe you start with something like that your other tool also offers a bit, where it's a feature, but then you find out I need more of that. And then, yeah, you take a specialized tool for that.
Oh, hey, we have a question. I'll come on to it. So it's from Anoop Sidhu. Could you talk about the role of Kafka in streaming and event-driven architecture? We certainly can. So you're in the right place. We are going to talk about the modern data stack, and then we'll get on to streaming, and I think how that how that affects the modern data stack. So yeah, please sit tight. We'll get there, and keep the questions coming, guys. So basically, the modern data stack is real. It sounds like startups and scale-ups are leveraging it quite a lot. So I wonder what's happening in bigger organizations. What happens in my bank, for example, my online high street bank? What are they doing? Do they leverage the modern data stack, or are they sitting on an old data stack? And what's the difference?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, of course, in some cases also old. We have to look into the truth, but they are of course also advancing in their data stacks. But I think they're not that much looking into the modern data stack, because they are just quite some obstacles, and I see them more moving towards these platforms. So big platforms like a Databricks, using a SageMaker, so more using a bundled experience. Because if we're in a big bank, it's just not possible to implement a new tool every 4 weeks. There are big processes of like, how secure is the product, and like so much process you have to go through that you can't implement all these single tools, and also can't keep up with the pace. It's just slower. So this like data platform migration projects in big companies, they easily take 2 years to 10 years even. So crazy times. And it's just not possible. So they rather go for the big platforms and take the bundled experience, and don't look for every single expert tool that just popped up in beta and try to test it.
Interesting. So it sounds like some trade-off of speed versus certainty. So obviously a startup is using the modern data stack so they can go fast and build something quickly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, of course, to build quickly, that's one point. But I think also that we see in the startup space that there's just a lot of talent coming up. So that's also something that we profit from, that the data space in general gets more popularity. We have fields of study. You can study data, which hasn't been the case 10 years ago. And we really have great experts who also want to work with expert tools, and want to like with the best ones, and look for open source tools, contribute to communities. And that's also really coming from the talents saying, hey, I've seen this in my Substack. I want to try out this tool. Oh, hi, where are we there?
We're friends of cats here, and this one is a very friendly cat. So he's come to say hello. This is Vernon. Welcome to the stream, Vernon. Thank you for your attendance.
Welcome.
Cool, Clara. So I guess actually what I wanted to do is share my screen and just have a little look at the modern data stack, because it's pretty complex, and talk about maybe who's using it for what, and where do you typically start. So let's actually share my screen.
Yeah, I think we have a bit different opinion on that, but I'd also be curious, what do you think about when you look into the modern data stack and all these tools emerging, and like a new expert tool here and there? What does it make with you?
Oh yeah, I definitely see opportunity. I think, loads of these tools actually take away a lot of the hassle of data. So think of something like a Fivetran or a Segment. We recently in Quix migrated from one CRM system to another. And we had the APIs from our sign-up database pointed to the old CRM system. And actually we had to re-engineer or remap the APIs from the Mongo. So we use Mongo to store our customer data. We had to remap our data from Mongo to the new CRM. But then after doing the job, I was just like, hey, why didn't we just put in Segment? Because surely Segment has got a Mongo connector, and Segment's got connectors to both the CRM. So we would have just saved ourselves a load of time. And I think it's a really good use case that if you want to integrate systems quickly, and you want to integrate these disparate systems, which basically all systems are, because we choose the best-in-class app. So we've got, our Mongo database is our choice, our CRM is our choice, our sales tooling is our choice, and there's all these other tool choices that you make, whether it's Slack or Notion or anything. And actually, if you can just integrate them really quickly with some of these, Segment, Fivetran style connection tools, then yeah, why not? Just do that. It takes no time and anybody can do it, and you don't really have to think about maintaining it. I think when you get into actually your intellectual property, like where's your IP in the business, it's actually in managing your data and processing your data. And I think when you get there, when you want to actually develop some logic, then you probably want to be thinking a lot harder about your stack and what tooling you're using. So yeah, that's my opinion. I mean, I do also have some contrarian views here. One of my fears would be if you put in place a Fivetran type tool, and the employee who puts that in place leaves, and nobody else knows how to use it. And you can't really look into that tool very well and look at data flow A to B and look at the lineage or the governance of your data. Then I think as you go from maybe a startup through scale up into an enterprise, you're probably going to start to unpick a lot of that modern data stack and move to your own stack, like your own pre-built, in-house built things. So I wonder if it's just a temporary short-term measure for the life cycle of a business, and then maybe actually mature out of the modern data stack. I'll be really interesting to see have you heard of any companies that really grow and mature out of it, or is it too embedded once you've started building on the modern data stack?
So you think they're going to build themselves solutions and building their own stuff because it gets too custom, they have too special requirements? And
I think you have special requirements, but you also have lots and lots of individual point tools, and that's just complex to manage, especially when you've got to consider larger teams and potential employee churn, for example. Like I said, if you've chosen a tool, or if an employee comes into a business and chooses a tool to do a job and they leave, you're sort of stuck either recruiting a specific person who's got experience with a specific tool, or you're stuck trying to learn that tool yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting, but I must say from my observations, I don't really see companies that much outgrowing the modern data stack, because I think when you're growing, you also grow your data team. And then when a person leaves, you don't just have one person replacing this person, but two person replacing this person, because you're growing. And then even like more specialists just caring about this specific tool, because you have more processes in this tool, more data is processed there. So that's something I would say I don't see. I think, but of course, there are sometimes reasons why you have to build your own systems when we're really talking about very big data, very special requirements, and you have these big data teams and the resources that you start to build your own systems. I think that's happening. I haven't seen it by myself that much yet, because I think we're talking about a very small portion of businesses here that really reach this scale. But I think the modern data stack is quite scalable.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, so I'd like to hear from anybody if they see any use cases where they sort of go into hyperscaler territory, or if I don't know, if there's a shelf life to modern data stack, would be quite interesting to explore. I just have to message Thomas because he is calling me. These things, it's good fun. Right, yep. So I was sharing a screen here about the modern data stack because I wanted to sort of explore it a bit and see where you might start. So could you sort of talk us through from left to right this, it's called the unified data infrastructure. There you go. So maybe we have a modern definition of the modern data stack. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe. So I know the screenshot where you got it from. I think it's from this article from Andreessen Horowitz. They worked through 3 different data stacks. I think one is the modern, I think I don't have the correct naming, but one is the modern BI stack. This is the multimodal data stack. So one that combines business intelligence and AI. And then the third stack they present is the AI stack. And so to have it as a bit of a context, so we're now talking about a stack that includes AI capabilities, real-time capabilities, and business intelligence, reporting, analytics capabilities. And I already love, Mike, that you say, can you walk us through it from left to right? Because we data people love to think in like from left to right. I know that you sometimes disagree with that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, we always start with the data sources. So we can also.
I was just about to say, Clara, there's never a two-way arrow, but there are a few two-way arrows in here. I thought all arrows in data moved from left to right.
Yeah, I think yeah, you're right. But I think this is how we very often display when we have somewhere a query engine and something that's applying transformation. So like reading and writing back to a database, but yeah, not really referring to a circle.
So in general, this is a very advanced view. This unified data infrastructure is a more advanced view, and maybe not the starting point for a company exploring the data-driven journey.
Yeah, I think this is something. So I think when we talk about the modern data stack, people would be a bit confused when seeing this because it has components that don't fit into the typical modern data stack. So yeah, I think it has some complexity that we quite often don't see. And we rather really think of like, okay, we have one technology to extract, then we have our data warehouse, one transformation, and then our output. So this is already a bit more advanced. And yeah, that's better.
So in which case, I think you'd have probably a tool from here, which is Fivetran. It might not show on your screen very well, but this is Fivetran, Stitch, Matillion, Airbyte. I mean, would you see Segment is in here as well? Is that right?
I think we see Segment. Oh, we don't see Segment anywhere in this picture.
I would suggest it's another tool here.
Yeah, or we can see it with the event streaming. I mean, Segment, I think it's not a streaming technology, but it's more in the event space. We have event collectors. I found Segment. We have it in the sources, yeah.
It's the source. Okay. I mean, that's kind of.
But actually, it's also an ingestion tool. So yeah.
I would say so too. I mean, even Snowplow's here, and you know, we're very good friends with both Segment and Snowplow, and they're much more to do with surely taking data from a source and moving it somewhere else, aren't they? Although Snowplow has really good API for integrating with your app to send data on, and I suppose Segment does as well. So yeah, maybe they could live here or they could live here. But anyway, so we have some source, which is just about everything in the world these days is a data source. We have some way of moving it into then the data warehouse. So this is the major component, isn't it, of the modern data stack?
Yeah, definitely. That's, I would say, the backbone, yeah, that everything gathers around.
And you mentioned Redshift in 2013, but of course you see Snowflake, BigQuery, even Databricks with their Lakehouse.
Yeah.
Lakehouse, there it is. This must be a Databricks. No, you said this is A16Z, but I think they back Databricks, don't they? So this with Lakehouse in the middle, it looks very much like a marketing diagram.
Yeah, we have to be cautious there. Yeah.
Yeah. So really it was the data warehouse which started to drive this notion of the modern data stack, correct?
Yeah, 100%. This just enabled the entire ecosystem. It wouldn't be possible without our cloud data warehouse. Yeah.
Right. And then as far as I know, the best in class is you probably get DBT and you do your data modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you choose some BI tooling, and this would basically be version 1. This would be version 1 of your modern data stack. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, And it's also quite funny that it gathers around such a small suite of tools. So when you think about the modern data stack at the beginning, it's really always, okay, Snowflake or BigQuery. Okay, DBT is anyway set. Tableau, Looker, or Superset. It's really a small number of players that you choose from at the beginning mostly.
Okay, and why would you choose one tool or another? Have you got your go-to tools, or is it just you've used it in the past and it's reliable and you know how to use it?
So I would say that, at least in my experience, I worked in teams where we really looked into the tools and also very often gave new tools a chance. But I think in general, the data community is also very open to new tooling and very excited about new tooling. But also the data community quite quickly builds an opinion on stuff. So in communities and so forth. And then quite quickly it comes out like what's seen as the best. And I personally also just think that these tools I just mentioned are just the best. So to be honest, at the moment, I just think a Snowflake and a BigQuery are just most easy to use. And I think also one point is that, of course, when you have a tool that's quite popular and that's growing, that they have a lot of integrations. And something that you always look for is the ecosystem around it. So you also have a self-enforcing process happening there.
Okay, so the connect account and the number of integrations gives you a good idea of the ecosystem, and therefore, if it's well supported, then you're going to feel confident using it.
Not just confident, but it's just a very relevant factor about how easy this tool will make your life.
Okay, because they've taken care of a lot of things for you.
Yeah. I think nowadays you don't want to build and maintain custom integrations with some Python scripts anymore. You want to outsource this workloads. You mentioned that we're now able to focus on the stuff that's really value adding and can outsource the infrastructure and like loading data from A to B, and that's exactly what people look for. They want to have the tools integrated by themselves and don't maintain custom connectors. They just take away their time.
Very cool. So let's say we've got BI up and running. We're I don't know, maybe we're a seed stage business, maybe we're approaching Series A. We want to win some investors, so we get metrics, we get our dashboards up and running. We've built this sort of BI stack, and I love your phrase, move beyond BI. So what's next? What's next for a company after they want to move beyond BI?
So I think one thing that happens after this stage that I see very often is that we look into the buckets at the bottom, data governance, data observability, that first you build BI and then you work on the stability of the BI. So I mean, it's just the ugly truth that if we look into dashboards and BI nowadays, that we have a lot of it's a term, it's data downtime, that the data is not accurate or not there because just quite a lot of stuff can still fail. So we work on getting the system more stable and observing the stuff and getting some governance there.
Wow, that's an interesting insight. So stuff can fail. What can fail? Because software apps these days, they pretty much don't fail unless someone pulls the plug out of the Amazon data center. Software apps fail. So where is the data apps failing? Where's BI and data failing?
Yeah, I think it's a huge point you're just mentioning, and we could talk for hours about this. And it's also something that I'm quite passionate about, because I also always ask myself this question: why are we in the data space so much behind the software engineering stuff? So I still see so many people working directly on master, not working in their branches, no peer reviews, no tests. It's really crazy. I think if people don't work in data, they won't believe what's happening in data and sometimes what kind of unstable systems people build. And things can fail in a lot of places. So I think one place where a lot of failures happen is from the data source. So the data source is maintained by other teams. If we look into you mentioned your MongoDB, it's very often maintained by the tech team, and they have control over the schema, the tables, and you load it into your data warehouse. And then we have a schema change in the MongoDB, and nobody's informed. And suddenly, like your data loading job fails. and then everything also upstream is going to fail. That's a very common example. So when there's a schema change happening in the data that's coming in, but you might also in the transformation step, you might write transformations that don't consider each single case. You test them with your existing data. Then there's a new case, how a column can look like coming in, and then it fails. And the problem is that everything on the left side, everything before analysis and output, if there's a failure, very often the entire dashboard is down.
I see. Okay. I mean, is it a problem that you've got so many jumps here? So you've got to jump from a source to an ingestion tool, to a storage tool, to a DBT tool, to a transformation tool, to another tool. You just got a lot of potential failure points.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also why I don't see it here, where we have data lineage tools coming up more and more that give us transparency over our entire data lineage. So from source to analysis, because it's just such a pain, it fails and you don't even know where. And I think this just shows that there are a lot of places where failures can happen.
Yeah, I guess lineage is often built into a tool like DBT, isn't it? But maybe I would call it also data observability. Is it built into these superconductive Great Expectations tools, lineage, or is that something different?
Yeah, so I actually don't know if like a Monte Carlo is quite big, if they have data lineage capabilities. Great Expectations, something else. Yeah, so it can be built into this observability or discovery tools, but there's also special tooling out there. Yeah, DBT also has your lineage graph, but I think with these tools, we speak about tools that also capture your entire source to output value chain, that you just need an external tool that can track everything. And it's not possible to have this functionality in like a DBT that just sees like what's happening in DBT and what's happening directly before and after, maybe.
Very cool. Good. Okay, so you get your BI in, you make it hopefully more as reliable as you can make it, and then what? You probably want to start doing something a bit more advanced, like machine learning.
Yeah, definitely. So first, I must say that I see a lot of companies a bit stuck in BI. And I mean, that's also something that I'm quite passionate about. You already mentioned it, going beyond BI. They always advocate for, because a lot of people get stuck in like, let's build another report and let's serve to more stakeholders. And I think you get quite easily stuck. Of course, you also provide value, but at some point you also have to advance and come over it. And you're never going to get to that 100%. You're going to be like trapped in a loop. But yeah, if you're not, then you're looking to the right side and thinking about these other data applications that you can build. Like I think something it's not in here, I think, that a lot of companies then do is reverse ETL. That's a common use
it's down
case.
here. Yeah, this is a more extreme thing. This is a second stage, is it? Reverse ETL.
I think that's somehow a second stage. Yeah.
Yeah. So try
Definitely.
and get some data back from your warehouse after it's been processed, and move it back to some application, like I don't know, maybe enrich data from Salesforce and send it back to I don't know, some other tool.
Yeah, I mean, just as a short example, a very common use case is that you sync, for example, the product usage from your data warehouse. So you track with a segment how much your product is used, and then sync it to a Salesforce so that your customer success managers can directly see on the account, okay, is there do we have the danger of churn? Can we do an upsell and that kind of stuff, to break down the silos between the different systems.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So some reverse ETL, and then I mean, we've actually totally forgotten to discuss the data lake. So how does the data lake fit in now into the world, considering the data warehouse exists?
Yeah, good question. So I'm a bit conservative on the data lake, because I think the data lake is also coming a bit from a time where storage was still expensive and we had to look for very cheap ways to store our data. So our data comes in and we store it in S3 buckets because it's just super cheap and cheaper than to store it in a table. But now with this cloud data warehouses becoming, storage becoming cheaper and cheaper, for me, it's not that relevant anymore. And I think it just adds additional complexity if you first load your data into S3 and then into a Redshift, for example. I'm critical on that. I think Databricks has its justification. I think Databricks, the product, definitely there's a reason for this. And it makes sense in the way that they integrate it directly also with your data warehouse. But apart from that, I think it's additional complexity.
Yeah, for sure. And I think actually this is where you see, I don't know, maybe a few years ago, 10 years ago, or something like that. A lot of people used to, I mean, this term, just dump, which nobody likes, but write all your data into a data lake, and then spend time after the fact to fix your data and put a structure towards it. And I think from what I know is you still see kind of implementations where you have quite a long data journey. So you might use some tool like this and write into the data lake, and then I suppose have some actual Spark platform doing a lot of processing on that data. So, particularly relevant, Spark, incredibly good for huge data sets. From my understanding, actually, Clara, this is the architecture you see a lot more in big business. Like if you went to that bank that I talked about earlier, they would have a data lake and they'll have a Spark platform, or they'll have a very big Cassandra kind of instances with many hundreds of nodes. They're doing lots of Spark processing, and then I'm not sure if any of them, I suppose they are, but once they're doing a lot of Spark processing, then they're probably writing some information to a warehouse for storage.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this happens in very big companies, but I think only also a bit in the one that are a bit more data native and come a bit out of the startup ecosystem. But with companies that are there for 30 years, I think they often also would rather than go for a platform solution like a Databricks, it wouldn't manage it by oneself, because I think we all know that Cassandra, Spark, Hadoop, all these tools are quite hard to manage if you manage them by yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And then crops up over here some machine learning applications. So I mean, SQL query engine, let's just call that Spark. Sorry, let's just call that DBT, because basically DBT seems to be the SQL query engine. It's kind of the same thing as that, isn't it? Or maybe that's the engine they've got Presto, Hive, Dreamio. Okay, there's lots and lots of competition in big data processing with SQL.
Yeah, but I think also, so I personally haven't seen separate SQL query engines, because first of all, I haven't seen so many data lakes, because it just adds additional complexity. And also the query engines of the data warehouses themselves got so much better. So when we look into the past data warehouse databases were more for storing and had bad query engines, and you had to use a separate one. But now you just use the query engine by Snowflake or BigQuery by itself.
Do you think this is a dying breed?
Yeah.
Come on, be brave. Let's make some controversial statements out here. This is a dying breed. Yeah. If you're not doing your SQL querying with DBT and using the engine from the data warehouse, then you're behind the curve.
No.
Right, and then we have got a lot of data science platforms. I'm going to change colors. This is fun. So let's say you've got good data systems, you're creating reliable data, you want to do some machine learning. Machine learning crops up in a few places. Here for some reason, but again, it's kind of like a big data technology, right? It's all about going into a warehouse and training models on huge data sets.
I don't know if I would say a big data technology, because I think you can also have machine learning with little data. I think we of course see, like, if a company is very big, they have a lot of data and they are also quite mature to use machine learning. But it can also happen, and I think we also see it more in the future, that companies that aren't that big, that don't have that much data yet, that don't have that many customer and events yet, that they're going to use machine learning and data science and mustn't have like huge amounts of data somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can also just go and take a machine learning model that's pre-trained from somewhere, like Hugging Face, right? And you can deploy that. So maybe you don't need a big data set to do machine learning applications at all.
Yeah, agree. I think there's
go on, sorry.
Question. Is it a question? Where does BigQuery fit in?
Where does BigQuery fit in? I mean, BigQuery's there.
It says SQL engine would be like Trino. I don't know if I fully understand the question.
Oh, is there a question in our chat, did you say?
Yeah. You don't see it because you share a screen.
Yeah, I don't see it. Can you read it out?
Yeah, it says, where does BigQuery fit in? SQL engine would be like Trino.
Okay, well, BigQuery is a cloud data warehouse from Google, so I guess it fits into this green box, right?
Yeah.
And then these SQL engines, you can connect to your BigQuery, you can connect to your Snowflake or whatever. It's really, the choice is yours. This is the modularity of the stack. Is that right?
Yeah, I would totally agree. But we also have another comment. Maybe you can zoom a bit more in, Mike.
Yeah.
From Christoph. He says, I saw some bigger companies with very big and decentralized databases floating around the lake. Very hard to bring together sometimes.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So I think what he's saying is, I mean, here there's a number of databases, but in a lot of companies, the data lake will be a composite of different stores.
Yeah. And I think, that, I mean, it sounds like a big pain. It sounds to me like you have somewhere your data lake, your S3, and then you somewhere have a database, like a data warehouse and structured data in this technology, then in another database. And it sounds a lot like chaos.
I'm trying to put many tables in here, but I suppose in the end, actually, the part of the tool of part of the task for a data team would be to try and use some of these data replication tools to actually take the data from one store and then centralize it all into your data warehouse. Is that kind of the point? That's part of the task?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I suppose it depends on how mature your data stack is, because if you're kind of an established company and you've been evolving your technologies over 10-15 years, then you probably do have some kind of back end which looks incredibly complicated, and in that case the migration effort to a warehouse is a huge task, would you say?
Yes. I mean, we're talking here about transactional and analytical databases. So you have all these transactional databases, and then you already have complexity there. And the tech infrastructure, that of course doesn't help when you want to load the data into an analytical database.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's talk about streaming. Kind of one of our favorite subjects. I'm just doing a time check as well, 20 minutes. So we've got 20 minutes to talk about maybe some streaming, stream processing, and real-time analytics. We did also just gloss over Workflow Manager. Now, Workflow Manager, how would you describe a workflow manager like Airflow compared to a data replication tool like Fivetran?
So for me, it's a bit confusing. We also see the workflow manager 2 times in this picture. For me, the workflow manager would sit somewhere at the top. And I mean, especially in this unbundled data space, we have a lot of tool for everything, and they run very often in batches, and they run to specific times, and you have this different process, and you need somewhere a tool that aligns all these processes and makes sure that you have a synchronous schedule of everything. And this is for me where the workflow manager would sit, where you have one tool sitting over all your processes and you can manage them there.
Oh, where would you normally put it then? You would move this, you wouldn't have it here.
I think I would move it at the bottom to the other tools next to like data discovery, data governance, data observability, because so it also serves these purposes of like, okay, something breaks. Yeah, you can look into your workflow manager, which process was failing.
Okay, right. Let's just redefine what everybody, what the world knows of the modern data stack. I'm just going to take out this this tool, and I'm going to move it. There, it's gone. The magic of Miro boards. How about that? Is that better?
Yes. Yeah, I think probably why it's there is that also in the past, you can also use workflow managers to like load your data from A to B, but I think we're now seeing them more for like orchestration.
Oh yeah, you know what? I missed it, but I also see the workflow manager here. So it's kind of like, it's a bit odd actually. We could redesign this. We should redesign and publish this, Clara, because you've got DSML tooling in 2 locations. You've got workflow manager in 2 locations. It's like, it needs a bit more thought, doesn't it?
Yeah. Can you zoom a bit in, Mike?
Yeah.
It's a bit small.
Oh yeah. Okay. It's part of the problem is my screen. My screen's quite large, and I copied and pasted this off the internet, so the quality of the image isn't the best. Right, Clara, streaming. So let's, what's your favorite color? How about orange for streaming? What's your favorite color?
It's not orange, definitely, but we already used blue. So we're gonna use orange.
We're gonna use orange for streaming. So event streaming. You've been a streaming advocate now at Qwix for 2 months. So you're very much a modern data stack, BigQuery, Snowflake, DBT gal, and you've come launching into Qwix to start thinking about streaming. So what do you see after your experience in the last 2 months of what's happening in streaming?
I think so. What pops first to my mind is like that I think of the gap of data and tech. So the streaming technologies, especially if we talk about Kafka, it's like people in tech talk about it and some people in data talk about it, but I see more really people talking in the tech departments, like building the products, talking about Kafka and streaming when talking about microservice architectures. So I think nowadays mostly Kafka is used to build out microservice architecture, so modern IT infrastructure, but that's also quite separate from the data team. So it's very often not a discussion that the tech and the data team have together and think about like how Confluent calls it data in motion. How can we have a central approach on data? But it's more the tech team wants to use Kafka for their microservice architecture. And then, okay, Kafka is then used to send the data into a data warehouse, and there is the walled garden of the data team. So I think a bit about a broken experience when thinking about streaming, because the companies don't think holistically about this topic, but more in silos. That's what I think.
So actually, I'm looking whilst you're talking down the sources list, and what I don't see is application. I don't see like, mobile banking app. Forgive my terrible drawing, but you don't see mobile banking app talking to Kafka or talking to, PubSub or Kinesis in a bi-directional microservices architecture, as you say, with lots of kind of back-end microservices doing their bit. And actually what you're saying is that streaming really is software stack for building applications.
Yeah, definitely.
Streaming. Okay, cool. I mean, I do read a lot about Kafka in data, and indeed the other technologies in data. Of course, there's technologies like Debezium from Red Hat, which lets you do some change data capture, which is kind of like a version of an ingestion tool. So you might want to put like a little change data capture microservice in here and do some CDC from your sources, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in general, I kind of see it the same as you. It's really just a microservices event streaming technology today, but that's not fulfilling the massive potential that there is for streaming.
Yeah, and it's quite funny that when you then like hear from data teams, yeah, we work with Kafka, and then you ask them like, hey, cool, what are you doing with Kafka? And then it's, yeah, we use it to load data into Snowflake. So they're exactly using it like there's the event streaming, then they load the data into their database, and then they do everything batch based. So it's, yeah, just because there's somewhere this pipe coming from the tech team, hey, here's your data, here's the Kafka topics that you might want to consume, okay, load them into your cloud data warehouse, and then that's the end of the streaming journey.
Yeah, I mean, that's because I guess this is over here, this is what Confluent brand is. I'm going to put it in here, data in motion, right? Data in motion is kind of like, actually, it's your application stack.
Yeah, can you zoom in a bit in general, Mike? It's again,
sorry?
a bit small for my eyes and our audience eyes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry guys, sorry. Yes, so I put in this like this is the application stack over here, and I put in this idea of data in motion is in your application stack, so you can build a low latency app. But then I think what the data teams are doing is they're basically taking this feed of data in Kafka topics or Kinesis, no, probably not Kinesis, that's more of a big data tool, but Kafka topics, and they're just syncing this up into the data lake or the data warehouse, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and that's all it's for. It's literally just then just a pipe of data.
Yeah, I think we see two kinds of companies. These really like quite big companies, big data teams, where they use streaming and stream processing, have a lot of events, and where also they don't really come from a modern data stack. I'd say these companies, they have like a business intelligence analytics team doing the modern data stack, and then they have quite in separate somewhere sitting a team working on stream processing, teams of data scientists, engineers, and software engineers together working on this. But that's a different journey of these companies, and it's also just a portion of these companies. So we have this application of streaming in data, but yeah, not that much in this journey from like, okay, I start with my modern data stack and then I start to adopt streaming. That's what we're still missing to see.
Right, okay. So today, I mean, streaming is really just being used to move data from A to B. It's like literally, let's get it to our tried and trusted warehouse where we can do our familiar workloads.
Yeah, except for these big players with really, yeah, where their entire value proposition is based on having to do stream processing.
All right, so you're talking about Netflix, Airbnb, Uber,
a lot of quick commerce companies, yeah, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, like the world's biggest tech companies. So basically what they're doing is they're able to take the data in motion. So they're able to take Confluent's data in motion, and they add some stream processing to the stack.
Yeah.
And what would you, I mean, how would you call stream processing? How would you define that?
I think so. That's a bit a mean question because you're definitely the best person to answer this, having built a stream processing platform. But how I also always explain it when talking to other people is that you have your data stream, you have your real-time data flowing, and you want to do transformations to this data in real time. So any kind of transformation you want to do, and that's for me stream processing, data transformation in real time.
Right. So basically stream processing would be DBT for Kafka type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So any kind of transformation that you want to do with a low latency, you would do it as a stream processing workload. So actually stream processing might want to be in this little, might want to be in this segment as a transformation tool. And then what's the point of it? So why do low latency and what are the use cases?
So I think one thing to mention upfront is when I think about like, okay, we're moving towards more mature use cases away from traditional BI, one thing that's so much popping up everywhere right now is real-time analytics and real-time analytics databases. I think, do we see them here? Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
ClickHouse, Rockset, Materialize, also Imply Druid. So this is one use case for real time, and also for streaming. And so a lot of people I talk to don't really buy into that concept, because when we talk about real-time analytics, it's very often that a human consumes the finalized data product, a human consumes this analytics, and we are just not made to react on real time. And I think there's no big value added. Okay, it's nice, it's a nice feature, but I think there are probably also other opinions out there, and there's a lot of money in this space right now, so I'm a bit careful, but I'm a bit critical about that. But the other thing that we talk about when streaming is transactional workloads. And this is workloads where we act on single events, and also where a machine is the consumer, and a machine can very, very well react to real time.
Right, interesting. So what we're saying is that a real-time analytics database would take event streams, would let you basically, in low latency, query across a number of rows in an event stream table. In an event, I mean, we call it a record on the broker. So it'll let you query a whole bunch of records in low latency for kind of the purpose of serving to some human in a dashboard, right? In I guess a BI. Where's the BI tooling? BI tooling's up there. Is that right? Or back to the product as well?
Yeah, of course. You also have that's embedded analytics. Then we also have analytics capabilities in products where we want to show our user specific statistics about their usage, about, I don't know, a trend of how many people visited my profile. I don't know. So I think we can differ there between like internal users and external users, where we mostly real-time analytics database for external users, for dashboard that's embedded into our product. But we have another question, Mike. Maybe this one's to you. So Anoop asks, is real-time data and data streams different things?
Cool. Interesting question. I mean, it depends how you want to answer that. I would say real-time data. I mean, I'm just going to say something really controversial here. All data is real-time. All data, every single data point ever created was created in a moment with a timestamp. That's real-time data. So if you're able to create and distribute your data, then it's real-time data. A stream would be a continuous number of real-time data events. So obviously you can create one event like Clara logged in to my hypothetical banking app. That's just one real-time data point. A stream of them would be her click stream. So she logs in, then she goes to her balance page, then she makes a balance transfer, then she applies for a loan, then she applies for a mortgage. This would be a click stream. So I think a stream would be a continuous sequence of real-time data points.
Yeah.
Does it make sense, Clara, or too complicated? It's a bit ideological.
Yeah, to me it makes sense. Yeah, but I think also it's quite hard to clearly cut a line between the two concepts of real-time data and data streams. There's of course an overlap. It's not like mutually exclusive that there's one thing and the other thing. There's a big overlap.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the misconceptions I often hear is like it has to be a continuous stream to be streaming, and I don't think it does. What streaming means really is also event driven. So it means it's more of like a push, call it on demand. So if you're using a streaming system to build some data backend, you could use streaming to really kick off processes. So you could have an event driven. That means when Clara logs in, something happens, and it's going to happen in very low latency, and it's going to happen very reliably because that message was put onto Kafka, which is a queue built for software. So it's a very reliable way to build back-end data automations.
Yeah, Anoop tried to put your answer into short description. So stream is list of events and real time is the event itself.
Yes.
Put it like that.
Perfect. Yeah. Real-time data is one event, and then streaming is a sequence of real-time events for sure. The difference is, I mean, I think the nuance that I'm trying to highlight here is it doesn't have to be really a very continuous sequence. And indeed, often the sequences are very sporadic. So Clara might log into her mobile bank and then she might get distracted for a few moments. So there won't be any events for, I don't know, 15 seconds. At that point, actually, you might want to say, hey, Clara, we're going to log you out. So you send an event back. So event streaming doesn't have to be, very, very concurrent data points.
Okay, there's a follow-up question now. Now we go a bit more detail. I see the time, we only have 4 minutes, but I think we really want to answer this question. So is event-driven systems equal to data streaming?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, data streaming is also called event streaming, right? So ultimately, this language comes from the software world where the login is called one event. So you create an event, and that's a stamp in time, which is Clara logged into the mobile bank. So you send that event, and then of course there's a second one. Clara was authenticated. Clara was, served this page, or so then you build up an event stream, and event streaming comes from the software world for sure. The other interesting thing about streaming is it can apply to sensor data. So if you had something like a wind turbine in a wind farm and you had the rotation of the blades, you would send a stream of numeric values to represent maybe the number of revolutions per second. So I think event streaming is increasingly moving towards what you might call traditional time series applications of like sensor data. But in reality, in the streaming world, whether it's an event or a time series data point, every single data point always has a timestamp, and that kind of marks it all out as time series data, whether it's event data, a photograph, a video, or a sensor reading. It's always created in a point in time with a timestamp, and that's kind of quite an interesting nuance about stream processing. You've got to get your head around everything. Really, the primary key for all your data is the date time.
Yeah. So there's one more comment. So when we say event, we mean business event, not a technical event. Clara logs in mobile bank. Clara went to order page. So maybe I can shortly comment on that. I think very often, like, there's a business event happening and a technical event happening at the same time. So if I understand correctly, I do something. I as a user do something, and then there's also very often, or in most cases, a technical event logged. Something happens in my database. There's an event collector that tracks this. So I think very often we have both appearing at the same time. But still, it's two. So we have 2 more minutes, Mike. So I think we have to make a cut here. We didn't have that much time to go now actually into the streaming stuff, but I think there probably be another session to come in the future where we go really more deeply into that.
Yeah, I think we can go into that in another session. I guess what I would like to maybe point out here is what's the point of kind of streaming in real time? For me, I think the point is to actually, and this is going to really blow your mind, Clara, but I'm going to send an arrow going the wrong way, all the way back, right? So streaming, event streaming, Kafka, stream processing, ultimately software engineering tool chain. And I think the opportunity here is that data teams can build these data apps better. If they use streaming architectures, they can do something with the data, whether that's simple enrichment or a more complex machine learning model. They can do something in real time, in tens of milliseconds to the cloud and back again, very, very quick, or build something like Uber's surge pricing algorithm, that matches supply and demand. you can
Yeah.
kind of build that back end on an event streaming or a stream processing back end and get data back to your products. I think you call it serving data back to your product.
Yeah, that's how I always put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a very strong statement to end with. Yeah, I said there'll probably be a follow-up. If there are more questions, you can either reach out to Mike or me via LinkedIn or via email. Maybe Theo can chat our the links into the chat. Very happy to continue the conversation. And also, I mean, there were a lot of controversial statements also to discuss them.
Yeah, it's really great. I had a lot of fun here today, Clara. So thank you very much. And guys, everybody join in. Thanks a lot to Anoop and Christoph and some of the others for the questions. It's been a pleasure. So see you next time.
See you.